If we have time, we'll do some Q&A today, so definitely have some questions, and I will hand it over to the fabulous Jim Ryder. Let's have a big hand, you guys. Come on. It's not Poughkeepsie. It's Manhattan. Let's hear it. All right.
Hello, everybody. Let's see. I'm supposed to hit this button, and then it should come up with a...
Check.
There you go. That's us.
Check.
Everybody, can everybody hear everybody? Excellent.
Everybody.
Hello.
Excellent. Well, thank you all for coming. My name is Jim Ryder. I'm currently the virtual production supervisor at Pier 59 Studios in New York City. I've been involved in visual effects and film production for, let's just say many years. And then a few years ago, really steered the ship of my work life over into virtual production and haven't looked back. And I thought, why don't we introduce, everybody else can introduce themselves.
Hello. Good morning, everyone. Christina Lee Storm. I'm founder and CEO of Azure XR. Most recently was at Netflix. I ran the virtual production group for United States and Canada. Prior to that, my background actually is in film, so I was producing a film for Bronze Studios, and then prior to that, DreamWorks Animation, where I ran the advanced creative technology team. We did a lot of really fun, cool things in real time around the motion capture stage, did a lot of VR, AR, and then prior to that, VFX, Rhythm and Hues, and prior to that, production and creative development. So yeah, it's great to be here.
All right. Arturo?
Well, hello everyone. Good morning. My name is Arturo Brena. I am the founder and CEO of KeexFrame, which is a creative studio here in New York. My background in virtual production starts also like many years ago, mostly on the broadcast side. It was mostly called real-time graphics back then, and now the terms are changing. But yeah, it's around, I would say the same as you, many years ago. We'll not say how many even, but we started doing virtual sets. I see some familiar faces from the broadcast end, guys, but it is so we did a lot of virtual sets, mocap for real-time characters and on-screen graphics, augmented reality, and all that world for live production. And recently, in the last three years or so, we got involved with Unreal Engine, as well as a lot of us, and we started creating productions for film and for other industries, fashion and so on, using real-time graphics. So that's more or less it.
Very good. Ian?
How's everybody doing?
Very good, thank you.
My name's Ian Fursa. I like how everybody said I'm founder and CEO of VP Toolkit. I was originally ran a production company and was a director of photography before getting into the world of virtual production. Since then, I've been virtual production supervisor for Netflix, HBO, the whole gamut, music videos for high-end artists, all that jazz. And then at VP Toolkit, we've also focused on education. So we have a YouTube series, online courses, and then also a plug-in tool set that is used around the world to hopefully help people do virtual production a little better.
Very good. And thank you all for coming, so I wouldn't be up here by myself.
It'd be a good show, though.
Yeah. One of the main questions I want to cover to start off with is people hear virtual production, but virtual production really covers quite a few areas and sub-disciplines. So a lot of times these days people think of it as in-camera VFX, Mandalorian-style virtual production, but it is a lot more than that and encompasses a lot of other related things. Christina, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think for the last 4 years, maybe we've been trying to really sort of set the record straight, because there was a lot of excitement that came out of on-set virtual production and the big shows, but that doesn't apply to everyone, maybe even attending NAB. So I kind of like to bucket it into 4 different buckets, virtual production, and a lot of people are like, so first, let's just say visualization. You got simulcam, you got virtual scouting. We can get into those details if you want. And then I think there's a whole bucket on capturing everything from scanning, volcap to, any other types of scan that you might do. And then I would bucket into on-set virtual production or in-camera VFX. That's everything from set extension, out the window, or car process. And then the last bucket, which I recently, in the last little bit, kind of added because I see it evolving, and this will maybe tee up some of the other parts of the conversation we're going to have, is I would bucket a whole real-time workflow. And that's all real-time, you're working in the real-time pipeline. And it might not ever make it to on set. It might not ever be touched with like a lot of crew members on set, but it's certainly going to be something that could be on screen and carried through concept all the way through post. So there's in the realm of virtual production, I feel like real-time workflows is the one that more and more people can use because they don't have to have a massive stage per se.
And then, Arturo, for your company, does a lot of virtual art department work, VAD work. Can you talk a little bit about, and you've been working a lot in Unreal Engine the last few years. So how much of that work are you doing in real time for, say, ICVFX work versus working in real time, but for more linear content, and maybe even talk a bit about broadcast and live as well?
Yeah. I mean, I think ICVFX creation environments have been maybe around, in our case, maybe around 30% of our work. And all the rest goes more into linear creation, linear animation using real-time rendering. Also a lot on, because the concept of virtual production, and I'm so glad that you define it so well put, it's basically real-time rendering, right? Is on its core, the main sauce is real-time rendering, and that can be applied even just to change workflows. And so in our case, we use it a lot to adjust workflows for traditional linear content. Let's say that we're creating an opener for a show, or we're creating a commercial or something. We take the jump into using real-time rendering technology in order to optimize the workflows. So ICVFX is bad work. It's like, I would say, like 30% of our work. And a lot of the rest is just how to utilize real-time rendering for all sorts of other applications, even interactive applications.
It might be obvious to people why content needs to be real time for ICVFX applications, because obviously it needs to be real time. But can you talk a little bit about why you're interested in working in real time for linear content? What's the big hook there?
I mean, the change in the mindset of the workflow is mostly because right now there's a very defined pipeline for creating linear content that is very segmented in between the different departments. And now with this new technology, it allows you to kind of merge and get all these departments together and working like in a single platform within a single unitone, right? So everyone's working together, and it massively improves how fast you can iterate and you can create content.
It's closer to being on a set.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The collaboration piece, traditionally you'd have to wait till whatever department you're in. If I'm in lighting or effects, I'm waiting for it to come down the pipeline. And instead, what's great about it is you're on the same page from the beginning, and it is tremendously faster to this point in which collaboration's happening. You don't have to wait per se for something to come to you. You can actually,
which is a big problem. And just very quickly, you to iterate on that point, like the fact that it's so close together, it's also a challenge for artists because they have worked in a silo for many, many years, each one in their own department. And now they have to work all together in the same project. And probably that's one of the biggest challenges when it comes to linear workflows, like having to think in a source control mindset.
Yeah, I've had a lot of, on a larger project that I've worked on, we had a ton of pre-pro. We had a lot of environments. We're planning on switching a lot. It was a series that was going to be filmed mostly in volume. It's because of the strikes, it's now not going to happen, but we were very far along, but we started to build out the pipelines of where everybody was going to be, what were those communication chains going to look like. The biggest issue that I've seen with this is the communication change and how that works. Because you can't have a director or a cinematographer talking directly to a level artist because they speak two very different languages, and there's not very many standards that are going to quickly change that because you have very skilled people on either side. So generally, like my position on a lot of jobs has been that median between the two where it's like, oh, you want a giant blue mountain? Okay, that's great. And I go over to the guy and I say, okay, they probably want it about 10 meters high, about, 20 feet to the back, like all these decisions that weren't detailed out where you kind of have to like paint in the blanks as a separate type of creative to then, the artists are good, but they don't, most of the time they don't quite see or speak.
Well, they're often, it's a different language. It's not,
very much
film language.
And I have to just say, I mean, because we have amazing supervisors here, it is so important to have that person who is the translator, who is the person that understands like all sides. And if you don't have that, I've seen failures where you don't have that role, and the role is really important. Things can fall apart because, as we know, even on set or even when you're just everyone's in a room on the machines, the communication is so key. And so I think underestimating how important the VP soup is probably first step of like not prepping well, and then allowing that person to actually speak into here's the prep we need. Here's what the translation is between this specific siloed role traditionally to this is something a little bit new, something that is new for a lot of people.
Yeah. I mean, I look at it as that's, I think, why it felt like a natural segue for me to get into virtual production supervision is as a visual effects supervisor, that's kind of the role that I did, which is talking to the director, talking to the DP and try to interpret and not trying to bog them down with too many technical details. It's like, and then translating that to the artists that are going to be working on it. One of the, since we're talking about, traditional roles in production, there's a lot of, promise of interactivity and pre-planning and pre-visualization. And like, Ian, have you found that, either directors or DPs are eager to embrace that? And by the way, the great thing about doing this kind of real-time pre-visualization is that if you're doing virtual production, ICVFX, very often you're working on what will be the final assets, but while they're being worked on, we're also able to do previs within that same environment. So everybody's working toward completion, and we can go to a director or a DP and say, hey, we can give you a virtual camera. We could put you in VR. And there's all the promise of all these things that can make it, really interactive. But I feel like a lot of people aren't really there yet in terms of embracing, like a lot of DPs don't want to put the VR helmet on.
Well, you got to think about time, budgets, what's most important. If you don't already have a perfect pipeline set up for these pre-visualization tools and that you are like, okay, we do a commercial, it takes 2 to 3 weeks. Every other day we show production this, then we get notes and we come back and we do that. And we have this specific little program that we use to feed them this. If you don't have that set up before a production, I mean, most productions are just being built up. And a lot of times the studio that you're hiring to do in-camera VFX doesn't have these pipeline tools. So if you don't have that, you're building that first, which is usually not within budget of whatever you're doing. So it becomes this confusion of like, I like saying no pretty often because it's like, the way this works is it's just like anything else. You get an idea, hopefully it's a storyboard or some kind of concept. You say, what are we building, and then you block it out and then you say, look, is this close? And then they give you notes, but then you come back and then you go, okay, is this close? And then at that point, it's like got stuff on it. It's got textures. It's got colors. It's all this like fill in the blank. And they go, no, it needs to be this, this, and this. And then all of a sudden you start moving everything around. You're breaking functionality within it. You're trying to build new tools on the spot. And that's where things usually break down, if it hasn't already broke down, just because of the communication chain not being there.
And I would say, just to go back, I think sometimes we've been involved in projects that don't have this prep time, that process there, that iterative process to really drill down to, is this what you really want? Is this what we're all after? If you don't give that, then then the only other option is you're stepping on a set and there's disappointment. And that is the worst, where you swing on the other side. It's like, well, okay, this is maybe some people's first time doing it. They're like, what happened? And that's everything we're trying to avoid, is why I laughed about the power of no. I've said that before in rooms. I'm like, the power of no is a strong thing, and it's not because I don't want to deliver. I'm just managing expectation, and I'm trying to make sure going in what you can get, maybe what you went out after initially as a, hey, we want to do this, is not the right thing. Like, that should have been a no at the very beginning. And so the process in which Ian's talking through is essential. Like, if you don't have that, and there's plenty of productions that like go straight in, they don't allow for any prep at all.
Which
and then
frightens me.
I just got off of one.
And there's a lot
after your 16-hour day.
Yeah, yesterday I worked a 16-hour production day that barely had an AD, just because of bad communication. And it's selling things to the client. Like we did VP Toolkit did all the environments, all the previs stuff. We prepped everything. And, every 2 days we would send them a 24 millimeter from the center of the stage, a 50 millimeter from the center of the stage, a 75 millimeter from the center of the stage. And then on set, they had the 75 millimeter that was like all an ocean. And then the director of photography is on a 24 millimeter, and we're wide seeing the whole thing. And they go, why doesn't this look like this? Make it look like this. And you go, well, we broke down that communication chain, and now we're going to be here all day trying to figure out why. And it's that back and forth and the cool thing about Unreal.
But we could make changes on the day, though. That's what the.
Oh, and we do.
I mean,
we do.
That we could move the mountain whenever we want.
It just crashes everything, and you're just going to take.
I think that the biggest challenge is the misinformation that there is around all this, because a lot of clients, I'm going to call them clients, whichever section that is, they go online and they see what is possible, and they just come with the very basic idea of what it's supposed to be possible using Unreal Engine, right? And they are like, well, it doesn't look like what I saw in Mandalorian.
No problems. I'm supposed to push a button or, hand you something, and
it is true, but it is true how a huge amount of misinformation about real-time graphics overall.
Well, also just which, I'm sure with the VAD work is, artists have to create these environments. These are talented artists and always have been talented artists, throughout visual effects history, but just they're doing it in real time, engines now. But, these things need to be created, which actually kind of leads into a question I was going to ask, about in terms of ICVFX, workflows. Talk a little bit about what the difference in workflow is for a production from a, traditional, production or traditional visual effects workflow to doing it as a virtual production. Like, just briefly, what are some of the considerations productions have to take into account?
You want me to go?
Sure.
You just came from set, so you get
I figure you.
I could tell you a million of them.
Go a while.
How long do you
16
have?
hours.
Exactly. How long are we here?
So if I'm doing my job right, not much. Besides the fact that you get to see what it looks like before we get there. But then the problem becomes that a lot of times directors of photography, key set design, things like that, especially on commercial projects, are not a part of these initial conversations. It's director, it's producer, it's client or agency. And, so I would say the main difference is that we can move most things with a couple clicks that's on the screen, but we can't it's faster. We can jump anywhere between any environment fairly quickly. Like I just did a Super Bowl commercial that we did 12 environments in 2 days, fully set up with high-end talent, with very restricted timelines of when they could be there. It was very well coordinated, and it was easy. It wasn't that hard. Everybody walked away really happy. But
how much lead time did you have?
Yeah, I was just going to ask.
That was the case.
What was the prep for the 12 environments, maybe per environment?
I think it was like 3 weeks. Well, three of them were rendered backgrounds, but we ran them they weren't like realistic. They were like things on the wall where we had wets downs and we could see it in the reflections, and it was part of the gag. But the main difference is really it's the same thing. It's the same thing. You can just understand it better, and you can't wing it on the day.
Well, I was try to equate, virtual production roles with, traditional production roles. For instance, we were going to, if we're building a set, well, somebody has to design that set, that physical set, and then we need the crew to come in and build it a week or two or whatever, that much in advance. And so if we're building a virtual set, we need that time. If you think about it that way, I always try to get producers to understand that, but often it'll be like, we'll get a lot of calls for jobs where, we've got multiple environments and we need to shoot next week. And so where do you guys get the environments from?
Oh, yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Wait, before he answers that, another idea is costumes, for example, wardrobe. Like if you were going to shoot something and it was a fairly intricate costume, you can't ask for a massive change, like either on the materials or the design. It's the same thought. We can make small alterations on the day of. Let me go and, maybe there's a seamstress in the back but that's sort of to get in the mindset of how quick, because I think the misnomer is, it's digital. So there's some artist somewhere in the back.
Yeah.
The Wizard of Oz, right, is fixing something and can do it. And so it's to remember there's people and things that are doing that. But to go back, sorry, I wanted to make sure.
No, I wanted to say that, in live production, live graphics production, it has always been, you can change as many things as you plan in advance.
Very good.
It is very important to say, okay, if you want to give the flexibility to the director to change almost every single thing in the scene, you can. And you can create controllers for every single thing in the scene. But you have to just give it has to be a very clear communication at the beginning, saying more or less what you want to do. And the biggest example is the lighting, right? Do you want the lighting to change, right? And it's probably the most popular since Lumen came out. Do you want the lighting to change on live? Yeah, okay, so then we have to go on this technology, but then we have to cut down in other things. One of the biggest challenges that we find in the VAD creation, in the graphic creation, is that there are so many talented 3D artists, but only a few that jumped from gaming to entertainment or other sides of entertainment that actually know real-time graphics, right? How to keep your memory down, how to optimize your textures, how to do everything that you now need, especially with, of course, Unreal is making it easier with their technologies and NVIDIA with a super sampling technology as well. But it's still, you need to know what you're doing inside a 3D scene.
So you said about the roles, and you kind of broke it up. You said the traditional roles of a virtual production and then the roles of a regular production. I think it's the same thing. I think the person that should design what it looks like in the image should be the director of photography, the art director, or the production.
Oh, absolutely. 100%.
And then that should be communicated correctly to VAD and to because even before I worked in virtual production, anytime I did a commercial, I wouldn't do it without, somebody that knew what they're doing in the art department, because I can put up a camera and I could put like 30 things on a table and I shoot it through the camera and it doesn't look good. An art director can come up and move those things for 3 minutes. And then I look at it through the camera and I'm like, oh, that's what they're good at. You know what I mean? That's the skill. That's the thing. That's the translation of it. And then it's our job to understand how to bring that into these virtual worlds, how to design for optimization and all of that, and allocate our resources and however we're, whether it's your team, whether it's my team, whether you're hiring out a team, whether it's your some of these studios are just a guy running a stage making $70,000 a year. And that's the stage you're walking into, and maybe they bring in one extra person that has no idea how anything works there and hasn't touched the environment.
I think one very important thing to mention is that, and which is showing in this conversation already, is that there's really, especially in the mid-tier type of studios, I'm not talking about the big studios, there's a heavy amount of collaboration needed between different studios in order to get a full production. Meaning, like, usually a studio will create a VAD, another studio will bring like virtual production supervisor and so on. Like, it's only a few studios that have the capability of doing everything in-house. So it is very important to communicate across studios, which is I've never seen before as much as with virtual production.
I would like to see, in terms of roles, I don't know that we're there yet, but, we talk about the virtual art department, and there's a traditional art department, and the production designer is, in charge of the physical art department, and always has been, that they are also, like, perhaps even in the same office. It's like the virtual art department's there as well. And because those two have to work together, but my experience has been it's sort of still more on it's like, that's like visual effects.
I don't think they should be in the same office.
Yeah.
I think more and more we're seeing the art departments up level. I think every production designer, art director, they're up leveling their entire like if it's a union show, their union, and they're, and recognizing maybe like 3 years ago, it's like, oh, wait, I need a digital what? Like I need what? I think today they know I need someone that can help do this. And to me, it's a up leveling of all of our skills, which is a really relevant conversation we're all having today with technology. But I think that's the place, because it's still, there's a craft, right? There's a certain craft that is being formulated within groups and departments and whatnot. So before, how many years ago, DIT didn't even exist on set. In some cases, DIT doesn't exist on set, which is like mind boggling, but it's like, so there's that. And I think the evolution as we continue to go, especially in linear, continues to sort of lean into that technology and up level everyone within the craft.
Exactly.
Makes your job easier too.
I'd like to ask everybody's opinion on how you feel and whether you want to emphasize virtual production, big term, or more ICV effects, but just in general, what changes have you seen in the industry, say in the last 3 years? Just throwing that number out, because 3 years ago we were in the middle of a pandemic. And I'm sure everybody's aware, or maybe you are, that there's some recent changes at companies like Epic Games and a number of other layoffs in the industry. And a lot of people have had thoughts about, like, oh, is Epic still as committed to media and entertainment as they were? And so, what do you think about all of that and what the changes in the industry have been in the last few years?
I mean, I feel that the main one that I've seen is the actual real adoption of this technology within the entertainment industry. Because 3 years ago, it was a lab thing, right? Every single studio created their lab department, and they were doing tests, and they were breaking it and doing tests and so on. And suddenly in the last year and a half or so, it's actually part of the production. So I would say that that's the biggest one I've seen, the actual adaptation.
The genie's never going back into the bottle.
Excellent.
Even though we thought it might have.
We thought it might.
I know myself over the last 3 years has been like, is this sticking?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it's like, yeah.
I would say that, I think there was a surge. It was exciting because there was a surge of like, hey, let's build these like giant stages, or let's, do these big things that, we're seeing the top level, teams do. And I think that even 3 years ago is like, that's like the 1%ers, or the 5%ers. And most people, that's not going to be a part of the production. And what's exciting now is that the tools are understandable, they're recognized, they're accessible. There's more and more talent being groomed as well, like growing, which is essential. We need 10 more of both of you.
Say that every day.
10 more of you. But I think that that's what's neat. And then for me, just, seeing how the application of real time, and I know we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but it's like, that I think has widened the ability, and it doesn't have to. That's why we start with the buckets. It's like it doesn't have to be just in camera VFX, but I think the push was that. I think a lot of people still feel like virtual production is in camera VFX, and I would say it's not. It's a part of it, and in fact, for me, when I was at the studio, it was like it's just a stepping stone. To me, it was a stepping stone to help do a technology adoption for all of our crews and all of our execs and everyone in the industry to understand where we're going. We're getting closer and closer, and people are seeing it, but it was just a stepping stone. So.
Yeah. So I started all of this from learning it when COVID hit, and I just had tons of time and nothing to do. I boot camped an iMac so that I could do virtual production, and did it very successfully. But I had a director of photography background. So what I did, even though it was with projectors or a boot camped iMac, it generally looked good. So for some reason, people trusted me. So I started getting emails and people contacting me all over the world, just saying, hey, can you help us with this? Because it was so hard at first. We had to code how it got projected to the screen originally. And then it got easier and easier and easier. And over the years, it became a fad for a second. And then every studio was like, oh, we can get a budget for this. We can get this, but all of those studios are gone now because of the fact that now it's operating like real production does. You have to know how to run a business. You know what I mean? You have to know how to run a studio. It's the same thing that you're doing as a production or as running a production studio or facilitating productions as a production company. But what's changed is now you have all of these. My favorite is the little satellites. So you have the top end, you have the Mandalorian, you have all that. They're like building these huge stages and they have these good workflows. They have multiple companies coming in to do their VAD, all of that. But then all over the world, I work with them every day, and it's so awesome. There's all these little commercial studios that pop up in the middle of nowhere, Wisconsin, like whatever, middle of Canada, Texas, all over the place. And they, as I said before, most of these studios are like one guy and an agency sometimes that may have had a studio, and they're popping this up, and they're just making really awesome stuff. Like, I'll just say W Lab in Brooklyn.
There you go.
These guys were,
big shout to them.
They were college students to a certain degree with some experience in the industry, and they do amazing stuff because they're not bound by the same restrictions as your Mandalorian, where you're like, okay, this is the biggest ship, we can't turn it fast, so they can fail and do all that. And I think that's where a lot of the ICVFX stuff is going. It was just like people are going to be doing stuff that breaks your mind, and then the top end is going to be like, oh, we should try that, but with all of the complicated pieces that we have. But then there's real time too, which has completely changed all pipelines. Like, in VP Toolkit, we've started to use, real time for education. So we're starting to fill the gap. So basically imagine me sitting at a desk, like the image over there. Hi, here's how you do this. Here's how this works and that works. And then we cut to Unreal Engine where the LED wall moves and you see all that. And we can do whole entire series like that. We can design any element and bring that in and render it out in real time to fill in the gaps of B-roll and have it exactly how you want internally. But then you can also, tell a much more elaborate story or creative story.
I mean, similarly to these like satellite, I do get excited too because there's so many different smaller groups. I'm sure all of us get phone calls about, hey, we're trying to set something up in Seattle or wherever.
And you do it for free.
Exactly.
That's what VP Toolkit does. That's our job is emergency calls.
Yeah, exactly. And what's neat is also just coming out from like live action and then going into VFX and then animation to, virtual production. The bleed is apparent in terms of real-time workflow. So I have the privilege of working with an offshoot. It's a real-time animation studio called Spade Animation. They are actually an offshoot from Spire, and it's incredible that there's a team of folks that can actually do real-time animation and push it to the point of like actual, feature level. And that's what we're seeing the evolution of that. This team, Spade, is just, they're from like Sony ImageWorks and DreamWorks.
Real time as in driven by real time mocap?
There's combinations of that, absolutely. Plus the pipeline itself is all an engine. And that's where that the first point we're saying is the collaboration piece is there. So I envision that there's this, it used to be very much divided between live action and animation. Like, oh, we don't do it this way. It's gonna bleed. And so, and in an exciting way. It doesn't mean like, oh, we have to do everything this way or everything that way. But I think as more and more people are working within a real-time workflow, that's going to be more and more apparent. And the fact that the level of the complexity as well as how it looks is going to be amazing. So
but the technology is helping so much now. There's so many amazing tools that are speeding up the process tremendously.
Actually leads me to my next question. Whether speaking technologically or business wise, like what are some of the big changes you see coming in the next 3, 4, 5 years in virtual production and real time?
I think that the biggest one that I see is data-driven content, more and more data-driven content. Meaning like we're going to start to see content that has been usually pre-rendered and delivered like that is probably going to be modified in real time or dynamically by either the audience itself or by the studios trying to push some advertisement or something like that. But it is data-driven content is definitely the one that I see the fastest adoption, because it's usually the one of how are we going to make money? And they are going to figure out that probably if you version out many times the same content using data-driven content, you will probably multiply revenue. So I think data-driven content is probably the biggest one. There's many, but that will be my winner.
You mean like interactive?
Well, data-driven in general, and not only interactive. Interactive, obviously, it might be once we get to render content in our own devices. But even from a network, let's say broadcast point of view, if they version out all the current openers that they are right now pre-rendered, let's say Game of Thrones, and every single time you see, it's changing based on audience opinion and what the audiences want to see, and the content is actually adapting because you don't need to render anymore. It can adapt up to 1 minute.
That's horrifying.
Yeah, based on the camera in your room, judging the heat and your facial expression and your eye position.
Data-driven content is going to change everything.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
What was the question again?
just what do you see coming technologically or business-wise in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, whatever, in terms of our industry?
Honestly, I have no idea.
Good answer.
Because it's where my hope is that just, I don't want to call it standardization, but knowledge spread. Because like, a year and a half ago, I had to tell every single director of photography not to focus on the LED wall.
Yeah.
Now,
Look at the
if I have to tell the director of photography not to focus on the LED wall, I'm like, have you done no research at all? Like this stuff
shoot
is
it at
now.
11.
Why are you pointing to the wall? Look at the monitor.
Exactly.
Like,
That's the biggest one.
I mean,
in camera means
I'll give,
camera.
okay, the rest of 2023, if you step on a set and that happens, it's fine. 2024, it's a new leaf. Just like, hey, let me just pop you a couple videos that you should watch. Yeah, go ahead.
But I do think there's going to be a lot more tools in that world as well that come out, new technologies. And then also, like we've talked about before, there's new advancements in, image-based lighting, things like that. Even when you're doing green screen, I say like, even if you're going to be eventually AI replacing your background, you still have to light your talent in most cases. I mean, well, actually the AI relighting is getting pretty good, but for now, we still have to light, and LED walls generally are not color accurate. They're missing like a white chip, so that means that they don't have the full spectrum that you would see from like a production film light. But right now, there's a huge wave of new technology that's coming out.
Big fan, image-based lighting, big fan.
Okay, I'll try it. I'll attempt to just throw, like, what do I see 5 years from now? So with the tools, and let's just call it tools, I get excited because I think, what will happen is it will allow creatives to attempt to try and push things in a new way. So it's not to replace, this, we won't have linear or we won't have this. I think, I went to the Sphere, a couple weeks ago. It was a day trip. And what I love about what Darren did and his team and Maddie is like they pushed something that is pushing technology in massive ways, from the sound to the just what you're seeing. And that will take it a new way. It's like, okay, with this location-based entertainment, we're going to be able to do this. I feel that there is a surge of like user-generated content as well that will find their place and figure out their tools. It's sort of like what you did, during the pandemic. And we're going to be able to see distinct voices come out and come play and be able to share stories. So I think there's something in that which will probably be leveraged by data as well. But it's more than anything, it's exciting because when there are tools that are easier for people to play with, then creativity starts to surge. And then I think the business tries to figure out, okay, how do we make this work? And that combination it's hard. But, as we see in the industry, we're all pushing to survive. We're all trying to pioneer something new and exciting. And it's really about our audience. Like, what does the audience, a future audience or our current audience, young audience want today? What do they want to do? How do they want to consume and engage in their stories?
They want to interact.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's probably the biggest one as well. Like all the effort that Epic, you were talking about in the recent announcement from Epic, all the effort that they are pushing towards interactivity and using the M word, Yeah, but it's true. They are pushing everything towards, okay, let's give the tools to the people to make interactive content. And I think it's going to be huge, everything that's going to happen with UEFN and everything that it's on that realm.
I mean, I'll just throw one out for everyone to think about. You could take sports, right? Even some of the new stuff that's come out, the new technology on some of the gaming sports.
Oh, yeah.
So you can watch your real sports, then on a live stream, you can have data like, content, whatnot, but then there's going to be, just immediately or while this live thing is happening, you have someone to be able to like, and you could do it now, but it's not as interactive, but literally my kids will then just play Madden and walk through that interactivity. There's ways in which it can be up leveled in terms of the interactivity and the seamlessness, but I think, it is allowing that it's like wish fulfillment. It's like the idea of like, hey, I want to be able to be, play the game that I just watched or do, and that's just sports.
I mean, what just happened with ESPN and Toy Story, I think it was ESPN, right? We did the Toy Story real time. So the game was happening live and then you could see it in the Toy Story world live happening as well. It was fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, there's the tech, like the moves of whatever player will be able to like, we'll get there. We're going to get there where it's going to be instantaneous. It's like, oh wow, that guy just did that. I want to use that play in my game.
Oh yeah.
Unfortunately, I think we're just about out of time.
Oh no.
I know.
Did you leave time for questions?
I know.
We didn't touch AI, right?
I know we didn't get to the actual elephant in the room. I'll tell you what, why don't we do this? I think we can spare a couple of minutes. Do we have a couple of minutes for a few questions?
I'm talking this one while questions for anybody? Questions?
Any questions for myself or the rest of the panel? There's one.
Where? Oh, here?
Hey, I know that guy.
How you doing, man?
How you doing?
So you talk a lot about roles and more on the high level art directors, production designers, DPs. Is there a place for the more granular roles within those departments in the virtual production, the way you have the difference between scenic paint, set deck, set dress, effects, who all have their very specific roles on set, that have been established for 50 years now, but don't really exist in our traditional VFX or animation, maybe in feature animation, but.
Well, I mean, I still let the other gang take this, but I still feel like once you're in the virtual art department world, there are a lot of generalists, but I still think, somebody who's a modeler or somebody who's a really good texture artist or somebody who really understands lighting, like lighting in the real world. I think those roles, those sub-disciplines are still going to exist.
I mean, an example, we have hired physical set designers for some of our events. Because it's just knowledge, or architects we have also consulted, because sometimes there's things that you don't know that they have all the experience in the world doing, and you're just putting it from real to virtual and using the same tools. So yeah, absolutely.
Your craft, like your special sauce, I'm really good at this. That actually is really important to bring because some things haven't been fully like created, and it's sort of like, hey, oh yeah, it would be great to have that point of view with this. So, I think things are evolving and shaping, and it's really finding like, I'm really good at this. That's what I want to go for.
Gotcha.
All right.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I think of I've described onset workflows to more boutique VFX studios are horrified of. I'm like, hey, Vinny, can I move this pizza box? Nope. Hey, Vinny, can props move this pizza box? I'll be right there.
Politics.
Yeah, exactly.
You're talking politics and chain of command, which is one of the biggest things that I run into on set when interfacing these two different worlds.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a really tough one that honestly isn't talked about enough.
That's a panel unto itself.
Is the fact that I have to, every time I'm bringing a artist or a new operator or somebody that understands all of the virtual side of things, I'm like, listen, you can't go up to the director. You can't go up to the director of photography. You can't, there's like, you come to me, I'll go to the head of their department or maybe not, and depending upon, and each set even changes how much this flows between things. So it's like, I think this will solidify more the more we get like on-set production people, and I think that the VFX world and the real-time world, all this is going to niche up even more, where it's like, oh, we have these, you have your departments even more, but right now they're just all over the place because we don't have enough people that can do this stuff.
Chain of command is how sets run, and to some degree. It's like, I guess it's like the military maybe, but I think, you know, it is the current, you know, culture. And then there's, as more and more people kind of come through, it will allow for how swiftly, you know, traditional production works.
It's very much needed. That communication is what makes or breaks productions. It's really like, you know, if we've had that with, we call it like a rogue artist, you know, where like he or she takes something from the director, what they said, and translates it, you know, without that direction. And it's tough because you got to be like, no, don't do that. You're not qualified to do that almost. But it's not that. It's just the fact that we're telling a story that somebody created in their head, and it's our job to bring that from their head and put it onto the thing with everybody's contribution to it as artists.
Wrap it up. Okay. All right. Well, I'd like to thank everybody for coming. Thank you for your attention, and thank you so much to the my co-panelists for joining us for what hopefully was a lively discussion. Enjoy the rest of the show, everybody.
Thank you so much, Jim. Let's have another hand for this great group and for that last therapy session.